Frisco, Texas, United States. A Russian immigrant's tragic end. The story of Anna Moses. On the evening of Monday, January 13, 2015, 43-year-old Anna Moses suddenly went missing. Her boyfriend, Michael Stodnick, became worried when she didn't show up for their planned dinner date at a restaurant at 7 p.m. When he arrived at Anna's house in Frisco, Texas, USA, around 7:30 p.m., he noticed that it was suspiciously dark inside, and her car was not in the driveway where she usually parked it in good weather. In bad weather, Anna would park her car in the garage. Michael rang the doorbell, called Anna's phone, and sent her messages, but received no response. Concerned, as she had never disappeared like this before, he decided to wait for 15 minutes at the nearest Starbucks. Upon returning to his girlfriend's house, he found that the situation had not changed. Assuming that Anna had probably been delayed at work, Michael headed home. On the morning of January 14th, Michael again tried calling and messaging Anna, but to no avail. He contacted her friends, but they too had not heard from her. Around 9 a.m., he went back to her house and saw that the trash cans were still out on the street, and there were unopened packages on the doorstep. Although Michael had keys, he didn't dare enter without knowing the alarm code. It seemed as if Anna had not returned home after work on January 13th. Michael called the police and asked them to check on Anna. The operator advised him to contact the law enforcement at the University of Texas at Dallas, UTD, where the woman worked as a statistical analyst in the strategic planning department, and was last seen on the afternoon of January 13th. The young man went to the campus and spoke with security, but they did not take his words seriously. Only after Anna's boss reported her absence from work on the morning of the 14th did the campus police initiate an investigation. A call was made to 911, and law enforcement officers were dispatched to the missing woman's house. They didn't notice anything suspicious, nor were there any signs of a break-in. The police contacted Anna's son, Igor, who had keys, and he soon arrived at the scene. With his help, the officers disarmed the alarm at 12:05. The log showed that this was the first time the system had been turned off since the morning of January 13th. So where had Anna disappeared to? While searching the house, the police discovered Anna's lifeless body in the garage. She had been shot dead, still wearing her coat and scarf. Nothing of the victim's belongings was missing, except for her car. A purse lay nearby, with money and scattered mail still untouched inside. Right there on the floor, they found an empty Taco Bell bag with a quesadilla wrapper. Anna had been shot 7 times, once in the neck, twice in the chest, and 3 times in the back, with one more bullet lodged in her clothing without penetrating the skin. The victim's hands had abrasions consistent with defensive wounds or signs of a fall. Although only 7 shots were fired, a total of 11 shell casings were found in the garage. Since the police didn't find any bullet holes in the room, it led the investigators to suspect a possible staged robbery. No fingerprints of the perpetrator were found on the garage doors. Detectives hypothesized that the killer could have sneaked in unnoticed at the moment Anna drove inside after returning from work on the evening of January 13th. Who was behind this brutal crime? The investigation into Anna's death raised more questions than answers. A native of Russia, she had moved to the USA after marrying a man named Robert Moses. He adopted her son Igor, and a close, almost familial bond formed between the stepfather and stepson. Initially, Anna and Robert's marriage seemed happy, but after living in the States for several years and gaining self-confidence, the woman began spending time apart from her husband, engaging in activities that didn't include him. The relationship gradually deteriorated. Anna also interacted with other men. She would go for tea with a colleague, Dr. John Wierkowski, who would lend her money when needed. In addition, Anna often attended the opera and musicals in the company of a certain Jerry Caspel. He was so enamored with her that he dedicated 2 books of his poetry to his beloved, although he insisted there was no romantic connection between them since he himself was married. The police spoke with one of the deceased's friends, Dr. Jarkane Christian, who worked with Anna at the University of Texas at Dallas. According to Dr. Christian, an unpleasant incident occurred between the spouses on December 15, 2012. Jarquinet recalled that an extremely upset Anna called her then and complained that Robert had locked her in a closet along with 2 dogs. The police were summoned, but the case was ultimately recorded as a false alarm. Dr. Christian claimed that her friend was terribly afraid of her husband, and once trembling with fear confessed, "He will kill me tonight." In March 2013, Anna and Robert divorced. Anna stayed in the house with her son, while her ex-husband moved into a residence that he shared with 3 other divorced men. Igor continued to maintain close relationships with both parents, visiting them often. After the divorce, Robert frequently helped his ex-wife with repairs and solving various household issues. However, during this period, Anna no longer complained to friends and family about fearing her former spouse. On the contrary, she seemed happy. On the dating site Match.com, Anna met Michael, whom she had been seeing for about a year at the time of her tragic death. During interrogation, Robert told the police that on January 13th, he spent almost the entire day at home watching a football game on TV. In the evening, the man went to a bar called Twin Peaks. Video surveillance footage recorded him entering the establishment at 7:06 p.m. and leaving at 7:57 p.m. Detectives noticed that Robert had a cut on his right hand just above the knuckle of his ring finger, with blood oozing from under the applied bandage. When asked about the origin of the wound, the man casually replied that he had injured himself at home while preparing food. In general, Robert readily cooperated with the investigation, voluntarily agreeing to provide a sample of his DNA and allowing a search of his room. During the search of the suspect's residence, police officers discovered several firearms, including a Ruger .22 caliber long rifle, a .22 caliber pocket pistol, and a Browning Buckmark .22 caliber target pistol. Anna had been shot with a weapon of this caliber. However, forensic ballistics testing revealed that none of the guns seized from Robert were identified as the murder weapon. The suspect's DNA was also not found at the crime scene, and his alibi regarding visiting the bar was confirmed by video camera footage. Nevertheless, Robert's presence was not recorded anywhere at the alleged time of the murder, around 6 p.m., which kept him on the list of prime suspects. Anna's abandoned car was found the day after her body was discovered, parked a couple of blocks away from the victim's house. A fresh bloodstain was visible on the driver's seat. Forensic experts also discovered a footprint of a soiled shoe sole on the car's hood and other traces on the roof. Inside the vehicle, on the rear passenger seat, lay an empty energy drink can and a cigarette butt on the floor. However, it was reliably established that Anna herself neither smoked nor consumed such energy drinks. Investigators suspected that the blood in the car could belong to the killer. DNA analysis results of the can's contents and the cigarette butt showed that they belonged to an unknown man whose genetic profile was not found in law enforcement databases. However, the analysis of the bloodstain matched Robert's DNA sample. When questioned about this, he initially could not explain how his blood ended up in his deceased wife's stolen vehicle. Later, the man claimed that on January 28th, shortly before the tragic events, he had been in Anna's garage, helping her repair a leaking water pipe, and probably could have cut himself then. The gathered evidence was sufficient for 64-year-old Robert to be formally charged with the murder of his ex-wife. The prosecution insisted that he had strong motives, means, and opportunity to commit the crime. According to the prosecution's version, Robert shot Anna with an illegally acquired .22 caliber weapon, to which he had a particular fondness, and then disposed of the incriminating evidence, carelessly leaving his own blood in the victim's car. During the 2016 court hearings, all the key evidence of the defendant's guilt was presented. Prosecution witnesses also testified, including Anna's neighbors, who claimed that on the afternoon of January 13th, around 3 p.m., they saw a Chevrolet SUV parked near her house that looked exactly like Robert's vehicle. This testimony reinforced the prosecutor's theory that the man had planned the attack on his ex-wife in advance, ambushing her upon her return home from work. That is, the murder was premeditated. Based on the collected evidence, the prosecutor in court outlined the following sequence of events. On the morning of January 13th, Anna left home as usual at approximately 8:23 a.m., going to work after activating the house alarm. She spent the entire day at the university without leaving and had tea with Dr. Wierkowski around 2 p.m. Anna's work shift ended routinely at 5 p.m. Surveillance cameras captured the woman entering the university parking lot at 5:02 p.m. and driving away in her car at 5:07 p.m. However, Anna did not head straight home. Data from her bank card showed that on the way, she stopped at a Taco Bell fast food restaurant, purchasing a chicken quesadilla at the drive-through window, and only then proceeded towards her house. At 5:44 p.m., street cameras near a school a couple of blocks from her residence last spotted Anna's car. Upon arriving home, the woman apparently drove the vehicle into the garage, where an armed killer was already waiting for her. According to forensic experts, Anna's estimated time of death was between 5:50 p.m. and 5:55 p.m. Her stolen car was found parked nearby only the next day. Unfortunately, there were no video surveillance recordings from that location, so it was impossible to establish the identity of the person who had moved the vehicle. Robert's defense, in turn, insisted that the prosecution had no direct and irrefutable evidence of their client's guilt. According to the lawyers, Anna could have just as easily been killed by her new boyfriend Michael Stodnick or someone from among her admiring colleagues. Michael and other men from the deceased's circle, questioned in court, provided evidence of their alibis at the time of the crime. In particular, Michael stated that he did not know how to handle firearms at all. Another person involved in the case, Jerry Caspel, admitted to keeping several pistols in his house, including a 9mm Glock and a .22 caliber target gun, but his innocence was confirmed by highway camera recordings and toll payment receipts. The lawyers also urged not to jump to conclusions regarding the nature of Robert's bloodstains found in the victim's car. A version was presented in court that these stains could have originated long ago and appeared there accidentally when the suspect, while still legally married to Anna, was working on repairing the car and injured himself. In addition, the defense drew the court's attention to a very curious circumstance. In the last years of her life, large sums of money of unknown origin were periodically deposited into Anna's bank accounts. She herself, working as a modest analyst at the university with a salary of about $3,000 per month, could hardly have saved more than $100,000 in just a couple of years, especially since she spent almost all her earnings. The lawyers urged the investigation to more thoroughly examine these strange bank transfers, hinting that they might conceal the true motive for Anna's tragic death, unrelated to her ex-husband. The officially established time of the victim's death by the police also did not escape the defense's attention. In an attempt to challenge this fact, the lawyers called an independent forensic expert to court, who testified about the state of the contents of the deceased's stomach at the time of the autopsy. According to this expert, if Anna had indeed eaten the quesadilla around 5:45 p.m. and was shot soon after, then at the time of the body examination, fragments of undigested food would certainly have been preserved in her stomach. However, in reality, the traces of food found in the stomach had already undergone almost complete decomposition, which is typical for a much longer period since the last meal. From this, the specialist concluded that Anna was killed later than the official version suggests, roughly between 7:30 p.m. and 8 p.m. And if so, then Robert already had an alibi for this time period in the form of his documented presence at the Twin Peaks bar. The trial turned out to be long and confusing, so the jury required more than 8 hours of deliberation before reaching their verdict. Ultimately, the panel found the evidence presented by the prosecution sufficient and unanimously found the defendant, Robert Moses, guilty of first-degree murder. The judge sentenced him to life imprisonment with the right to apply for parole after serving 30 years, that is, no earlier than 2046. Disagreeing with the harsh sentence, Robert filed an appeal in 2018. The Court of Appeal, however, left the defense's arguments unsatisfied. Thus, at present, Robert Moses continues to serve his life sentence, still insisting on his own innocence and not admitting his involvement in the brutal murder of his ex-wife. To summarize the above, the tragic and mysterious death of 43-year-old Anna Moses, a single mother from Russia, in January 2015 shook the quiet town of Frisco, Texas. The police quite quickly got on the trail of the alleged killer, who turned out to be the victim's ex-husband, Robert. Thank you for watching this video. Write your opinion in the comments, and also do not forget to put a like if you like this story. Take care of yourself and your loved ones.